Council Liaison, Attorney Christine O'Donnell is on, and I'm sure others will be joining us. So I'm going to get some of the formalities out of the way as more folks join. Good afternoon. My name is City Council Large Michael Flaherty. I am the Vice Chair of the Committee on Government Operations. It's Thursday, December 9th. We are here today for a virtual hearing on docket 1239, order authorizing the creation of a sheltered market program for minority and women-owned businesses in the City of Boston. This matter was sponsored by Mayor Michelle Wu and referred to the Committee on Government Operations December 1st, 2021. The City Council will be conducting this hearing virtually via Zoom. It's being recorded and held in accordance with Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021. Chapter 20 modifies certain requirements of the open meeting law and relieves public bodies of certain requirements, including the requirement that public bodies conduct their meetings in a public place that is open and physically accessible to the public. This enables the City Council to carry out its responsibilities while adhering to the public health accommodations and ensuring public access to its deliberations through adequate alternative means. The public may watch this meeting via live stream, www.boston.gov/city-council-tv, or live on Xfinity 8, RCM 82, Verizon 964. It will also be rebroadcast at a later date. For public testimony, written comments may be sent to the committee email at ccc.go@boston.gov and will be made part of the record and available to all councilors. This order will authorize the creation of a sheltered market program as a pilot tool with the purpose of advocating equity in city contracting. Pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 30B, Section 18, a sheltered market program allows the city to designate certain contracts for procurement from one or more classes of disadvantaged vendors. The purpose of the sheltered market program is to create an environment that allows for small, local, and diverse businesses to build their capacity to compete for contracting opportunities. Under the provisions of this order, Chief Procurement Officer for the City of Boston is authorized to establish a sheltered market program in compliance with Mass General Laws, Chapter 30B, Section 18. This authorization applies to contracts for goods, professional services, and support services. The authorization is for no more than 6 contracts, which must be awarded by June 30th, 2022. The program will be available for disadvantaged minority and women-owned vendors for whom there is a demonstrated substantial disparity in the city's 2020 disparity study. The state law included in the packet sent to councilors in advance of this afternoon's hearing also requires a procurement officer establish written procedures for the certification of disadvantaged vendors, and also requires a procurement officer hold a public hearing regarding the written procedures. Before I turn it over to my colleagues for any opening remarks in order of their arrival, joining us today from the administration, we have Justin Sterrett, Chief Financial Officer, Collector Treasurer. We have Chief Selena Barrios-Milner, Equity and Inclusion, and Michael Miller, the Director of Strategic Procurement. Also joining us at some point today and has been invited is James Rooney, President and Chief Executive Officer of the Boston Chamber of Commerce. I know that I do not see him on now. He could be in the waiting room and or joining us at some point. And if and when that happens, I'll be able to reintroduce him. So without further ado, I see my colleague, City Councilor at Large, Erin Murphy on. If Erin, you have any opening comments, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for holding this meeting, and I just look forward to the conversation. And obviously, this is an important issue that I look forward to working on in the coming term. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Murphy. And I'm going to turn it right over to the administration for opening comments. So Justin, is it appropriate that you'll start off, followed by Selena and Michael? It's obviously, it's as always good to see you guys and appreciate your time and attention to this very important issue as we're sort of closing out our legislative calendar in 2021. So I appreciate you making time. I know you're all very busy. I know it's very important. I know this is also very important to Mayor Wu. So without further ado, Justin Sterrett, followed by Selena and Michael. Just please introduce yourselves and your official capacity for the record, and you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, and nice to see you, Councilor Murphy. Welcome, and look forward to really diving in on this and many issues with you as you begin your tenure. So I'm going to be very brief, and then I'm going to turn it over to the real experts, Chief Barrios-Milner and Michael Miller, who works in my office. I think my official capacity today is actually as Chief Procurement Officer for the city. So what we're going to talk about today is a little bit of background on where we've come on contracting from an equitable procurement lens, as well as sort of this proposal that we have in front of the council today about creating a sheltered marketplace within the city's confines, and how this is going to represent an additional tool in our tool belt as we think about improving our inequities in city contracting going forward. I'm going to present a deck if folks don't mind. Can you see my screen? Great. So I'm going to turn it over to Selena to walk us through some background on the issue, and Michael's going to jump in and then talk about the program specifics, and then really happy to take any questions and look forward to the discussion.
Thank you so much.
Selena, just tell me when to go forward on the slides, okay?
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chief Sterrett, for your partnership from day one on trying to make the procurement process more equitable and accessible for our small, minority, and women-owned businesses. I'm Selena Barrios-Milner, Chief of Equity and Inclusion. Thank you, Chair Flaherty, for holding this hearing, and welcome, Councilor Murphy. I really look forward to getting to work with you. Just want to start you off on where we've been and why we're exploring this pilot program. And then Mike Miller will get into the specifics of what it is and how it's going to work. But really want to ground us in where we've been and where we need to move. So I'm going to start you, jump right into the disparity study that we completed in 2021, where the disparity study, the goal was to look at our utilization of minority and women businesses in our city contracting. And a couple things just to point out up front, the disparity study and really how we talk about our diverse spending overall really focuses on discretionary spend. So we're talking about the money that the city spends where it's a competitive process or where so this excludes, insurance, personnel costs, utilities, et cetera. So the disparity study looked at our discretionary spend over a 5-year period, and the focus was twofold. One, to assess what our spend was in that time with minority and women-owned businesses, and two, to see who was out there in the specific lines of work that we contracted in over that time that we could have contracted with. So that's known as availability, because it's not enough to know what our spend is in a vacuum, because we might be doing great, right? If we don't know who's out there, we don't know how we're doing. So that's why the name of the study is a disparity study. The other piece I'll point out, which is really important for our conversation, is that for the purposes of the study, they counted businesses that they independently verified as minority or woman-owned. And so that universe of businesses is actually larger than businesses that are certified as women or minority-owned, which is how the city usually talks about its spend. So the numbers will look a little bit different than our own numbers, because their universe of vendors, they actually went a few steps further to verify. So we only count those that are certified by us or the state Supplier Diversity Office. So in the study period, over a 5-year period, the city spent $2.2 billion in discretionary spend. And of that, 11% went to minority and women-owned businesses. And here you see the breakdown of the percentage that went to those. Obviously, when you look at it by race, it's even more glaring than the pie chart would suggest. And if you look at the next slide, they further looked at by industry, what's the disparity? So what we're looking for here, any number 80 or above shows that we're at parity, like we're contracting in line with who's available. Anything below 80 shows a substantial underutilization of available vendors. And that's been highlighted in red here. So as you'll see, across different industries, I won't read every number out to you, you should all have this for further review. But the big takeaways are, one, Black Americans, there's a substantial, that Black-owned businesses showed a substantial underutilization across all types of industries. And the construction industry overall, there were disparities for every group. And when you look at today, I just want you to focus on the right side of the slide, because the provision that we're using limits these programs to those types of contracts that fall under 30B. So we cannot create sheltered market programs under this provision. For those two columns on the left, the construction related fall under a different state procurement law. So here we're looking at professional services, support services, and goods and supplies, which generally fall under 30B. So you can see, for example, in support services, there was disparity pretty much across the board. So moving on to the next slide. Before, during, and after the Chief Starrett, if you could advance the next slide. Thank you. Before, during, and after the disparity study, we have been focusing on creating access and opportunity for our local businesses. The key things I just want to highlight here is that between 2003 and 2018, the city did not have a program that specifically supported minority and women-owned businesses, and that was due to a legal challenge in the late 90s. So you can see over that time, numbers went down, a lot of businesses closed that had kind of built their businesses around government contracting. And so in 2018 is when we decided to, launch this disparity study and then take steps to proactively expand the pool of vendors. We took the first step prior to the conclusion of the disparity study, which was the Equitable Procurement Executive Order. And what that laid out is basically for any contract that the city is procuring, they have to reach out to at least one certified vendor from our certified business directory. So it's called an affirmative marketing policy. It doesn't say anything about how you award. It just says at least reach out to one person where available. We've also been investing significant resources in capacity building and giving direct grants to local diverse businesses, as well as building our own internal capacity to support businesses. And lastly, upon the conclusion of the disparity study, we adopted a very ambitious goal of contracting on an annual basis, 25% of our dollars should be going to minority and women-owned businesses combined. So we adopted this after we adopted the findings of the disparity study. And remember, the disparity study found that we were at 11% roughly using the way they measure those businesses. And so we set a goal to basically double our spend with minority and women-owned businesses from that moment in time. In this time, you can move on, Justin. Before, during, and after the disparity study, we've been doing really proactive outreach, creating opportunities for vendors to connect directly with city departments, especially along specific contracts. We've awarded a significant amount of funds and grants. We've streamlined the certification process so that we can build that pipeline so that it more matches what was found in the study versus what we currently have in our certified business directory. And then the next slide. As I mentioned earlier, for every single contracting opportunity, we are reaching out to a certified vendor as part of the outreach. So whether we're soliciting 3 quotes or whether we're putting out an RFP, we're ensuring that at least one certified vendor is notified of the opportunity where they are available. And so as you see, and we only have found for about half of the opportunities, we were able to find at least one. That means that the opposite is true as well, that we were not able to find. So if you look at the next slide, through all these interventions, we have seen our spend with minority and women businesses steadily increasing. If you follow that dotted line, you can see the general trend is upward, starting in the first quarter of fiscal year 2019. You'll see some big spikes around the late 2020 and early 2021. And if we were in person, I would have people guess what happened there, but obviously that coincides with some of the pandemic spend. And in this case, due to the purchase of Chromebooks with BPS. That did go to a minority contractor. And so you see some very large spikes because that's a lot of money in one single contract. And so, but generally, even if you sort of don't account for those spikes, you've seen a steady upward trend. However, if you see where that line is hovering, it's nowhere near the goal we've set for ourselves of 25%, or even the 11% that was found in the disparity study. So we know that we're steadily improving. We also know we have a long way to go, and that our businesses need all of the opportunities they can, both to help close the racial wealth gap, but also to just revitalize our communities and ensure that our local economies are thriving. And so we want to make sure that our city resources are being invested locally. And I'll hand it over to Mike to really talk about this new tool in addition to all the tools that we've been using.
Great.
Thank you, Mike. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. 1 second. Good moment. Good morning, or afternoon. Chair Flaherty, thank you, and Councilor Murphy, very nice to meet you. Thank you, Chiefs. So this slide is really looking at, my name is Michael Miller. I'm the Director of Strategic Procurement for the city, and I've been here for about 9 months now. But one of the biggest things that we've started to look at, and this is work that has been going on for several years, but really has started to accelerate and really kicked off, is looking at all of the different tools that we have available to try and change the outcomes. One of the big things that we look at as we're doing this is that moving the needle isn't about the numbers, about just the numbers. It's about actually putting dollars into the hands of MWBE firms. And so how do we do that? What are the actual specifics we do? And so these are some of the tools that we have available. Breaking it down, there are really a couple major areas of intervention. There's really building that pipeline, which Selena had just mentioned. There's the application process. What is it like to actually apply to bid on work for the city? And then there are interventions that can affect the outcome, the actual award of the contract. And in front of you, there are a couple examples of the things that we've done in bold, and then some of the other options that are on the table or in development are things that we're trying to work on. So specifically, what we're getting into today is really a sheltered market program that is one of the strongest tools that we have available to actually start getting those contracts directly where we want them to go. So what does this start to look like? So as you mentioned earlier on, Mr. Chairman, the Chapter 30B basically it's an existing state law that really governs the procurement of goods and services. And one of the sections under there, Section 18, allows for the creation of a sheltered market program. Again, very specifically, being able to point at individual contracts, if authorized, point at individual contracts and say, these are only available for these businesses that have been certified to participate in this market. Very simple, very easy. It's a very powerful tool, but there are some bits and pieces that we have to stand up as we get this thing rolling. So, as for the purposes of this pilot, a lot of what we're doing here is the purpose of the pilot really is about exploring the realities of standing up such a program and what are the specific details that it's going to take to get this done. And we're going to go into some of them right now. But this is the first time that this has actually been done. And so we're trying to start with something that is manageable and that we can work with and build on that and actually succeed in our first couple steps and then be able to build on it. So we're talking about up to 6 contracts, again, that are going to be awarded by the end of the fiscal year. And they're going to be targeted at those businesses with a substantial disparity. Simple and easy. So why just 6 months? Why 6 contracts? As we mentioned, we really need to make sure we figure out exactly what this is going to take and some of the very specific details of standing up this program under Section 18. And we want to make sure that this is like a strong policy that's going to stand up and have the impact that we want it to have. Again, we're walking out front on this one, and so there's a lot to figure out. In terms of one of the other chunks is that we want to be able to learn. And so what is this going to take for various types of goods contracts or different service contracts? And so one of the things we have to figure out are what are the availability of businesses to perform this work? What is it going to take to get them certified, stood up, and in this specific timeframe that we're looking at. Again, the goal is to figure out what this is going to take, build some capacity out there in the market, build some capacity internally, and then learn from our findings as much as we can and scale this up going into fiscal year 20. So the next is to walk through what are the details that get us between now and the actual start of the program. So as Chief Barrios-Milner had mentioned, we had the disparity study, which really enables us to get going on this with race and gender conscious measures. We're now in the process of filing the order for authorization. And then the next big step is going to be writing procedures. And we're going to get into that on the next slide. But following that, we get these procedures out. There's some specific details. We'll take that. We have a public hearing looking for comments from the public. What's going on? How is this going to work? What are some of the concerns and questions that people have? Really incorporate this because it's going to take a really good community to stand this up. We take those procedures. Once they're finalized, we file them with the Supplier Diversity Office for the state and the Secretary of State. We publish them in a newspaper, and then we start to roll. This is the point where we start to identify the individual contracts, place them and release them through the sheltered market. And then we're trying to get those 6 in place by the end of the fiscal year. One note that I'm going to keep hammering on is that a big difference is that you must receive at least 3 business responses for any procurement to count. So this is one of the things that, again, is going to take some time and some planning and a lot of coordinated outreach. So out of those procedures, there are a couple specific details here and there, and we've gone into them, but to hit the real highlights on it, again, it's procedures governing the certification of contracts or the certification of businesses, the designation of contracts for release under the sheltered market, and then some specifics on the actual contracts itself. So the 3 big things that pop out and are really new about this one is that any procurement must receive, not solicit, but receive at least 3 responses for it to be valid. Any given vendor may not have more than 1 active sheltered market contract at a time, and no vendor can have more than 3 contracts issued through a sheltered market over the course of a 12-month period. This is one of the things that we're looking at because it's not just 6 bids from 6 MWB firms. We're looking at 18 for these 6 contracts at a bare minimum. And so as we're identifying this, it's a question of figuring out what contracts are coming up, what contracts make the most sense to do this, what contracts have significant MWB availability, and then whether or not those are currently certified or have to be certified, and what does that outreach start to look like? So that's one of the biggest frames here that we want to come up with. At the end of this, Justin, next one, please. At the end of this, there's a lot of monitoring and reporting that's built in. And at the end of this pilot period, and then at least every year thereafter, if this gets authorized and stood up as a full-time program, there'll be a written report detailing what happened, what the impact was, how many contracts were let, how this is comparing to the rest of city contract. So this is really it's a very strong and data-driven analysis of whether or not this works. And a piece of this is going to be also a recommendation every year at least of out of the procedures that we had, out of the things that we did, do we want to continue as it was? Do we want to modify it? Or is this not working and we should stop? And so there's a really good feedback loop that's right there. Now, going back to the beginning, as we were talking about this, how are we going to select the contracts? Again, can't hammer this one enough, that we really have to be very precise with which contracts are coming up and have enough availability so that at least that they were among the disadvantaged businesses through the disparity study, and that there are at least 3 MWB firms that can perform the work. And so as Chief Barrios-Milner pointed out earlier, these are the areas with the highest disparity. These are the ones that we're going to be working on. But that is the nuts and bolts of what this is going to take to get rolling. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Michael. And before we move on to questions, Councilor, I just want to again thank Mayor Wu for pushing us to, the day she got here, she was looking for things that we can move on quickly and with a lot of determination to improve these numbers. And this is something that, we hope to partner with the council with, once we've gone over any questions to really start to move the needle forward. And appreciate your support, Councilor, so far, and look forward to any questions you may have.
Good. Thank you, Justin, Selena, and Michael. We've been joined here by my colleagues. We were joined at the very beginning, and we missed to not mention City Councilor Ed Flynn and City Councilor Frank Baker. I just have a couple quick questions, and I was going to turn it over to my colleagues for statements and questions. And the first question, I guess, is, does this order allow the city to sort of circumvent Chapter 30B, which is the general procurement requirement? And then two is, how many companies can potentially benefit from this based on the areas that you guys have identified? And I guess what types of contracts are we thinking about utilizing this for? So I just have three quick questions, if you can answer them in any particular order, and then I'll go right to my colleagues.
So the industries by which we're looking, and I'll answer them in reverse order, sorry. The industries really fall into, and if you can still see my screen, these two buckets here around professional services and support services. So not really the 149 construction contracts that many folks are familiar with, but these are sort of about 1,200 contracts that the city puts out around these two categories of services.
Justin, just for the public's edification, give the public an example of a couple professional service contracts.
Oh, sure.
A couple example of support service contracts.
Great. Selena or Michael, you guys are the experts. Please feel free to jump in on those.
So professional services are your typical sort of consultants. Some types of engineering consultants fall into that, but think graphic design, that type of thing. Support services are the citywide services that are, for example, copying and printing. Some maintenance contracts are support services. So basically everything that is not construction related is a good way to think about it. And then goods are pretty easy. Those are objects that you buy, pencils, pen, paper, chairs, that type of thing. But that one we're not focusing on at this moment.
Okay. Very good.
And then as far as circumventing 30B, this is actually a part of 30B, this statute that we're enabling. We're one of the first, I think, if not the first city in the Commonwealth to request this type of authorization. So we are very much, as Michael alluded to, sort of trying to pilot this to make sure we get it right before we sort of think about expanding it throughout the city. So it is very much envisioned as part of 30B, and this is sort of the statute we're actually working under.
Very good. Councilor Erin Murphy, do you have any questions of the panel?
Not right now. No, thank you though.
No problem. Councilor Ed Flynn, if you have an opening and or any questions of the panel, Councilor Flynn, you have the floor. You have to unmute yourself, Councilor Flynn. There you go.
Thank you, Councilor Flaherty, and thank you for the important work you and the administration is doing on this issue. I was listening to the conversation closely, and I guess my question is there a minimum and maximum in terms of dollar amount that contracts could be awarded to under this pilot program?
Michael, do you want to grab that?
Sure. Thank you, Councilor Flynn. So in terms of, are there a specific minimum or maximum on this under this authorization? No, is the simple answer. One of the things that we're trying to figure out is this sort of ties into the previous question in terms of, bypassing versus as a part of 30B. This is really 30B plus. You're required to follow all of it with these additional steps. And so one of the things that we really want to test with this is looking at things in the written quote contract area. What do we have under, between 10 and 50, and then between 50 and up? So the short answer is no. And the next I think about 30 words at this point. Really, we're focused on, again, we want to learn a little bit about what this is going to take at the different sizes. Does that answer the question, sir?
Yes, it does. Thank you for the answer. My second question, and I support this pilot program. I think it's overdue. So just want to acknowledge that I'm on record in support of this. My second question is, this pandemic has hit my district pretty pretty hard. It hit all districts hard as well. I also represent a large immigrant community. Many of the businesses are owned by women, but they're also immigrant owned as well. How are you going to work closely with immigrant owned businesses, and what type of outreach are you going to do for them?
Yeah, thank you so much, Councillor Flynn, and for always keeping the immigrant community close to your work. We definitely plan on doing extensive outreach for this and in all different types of media. Ethnic and local media, certainly social media and our traditional channels. And we do work with our Language and Communications Access Office and especially Will for this too, to make sure that the information is going out in a way that those who don't speak English as their primary language are also aware of these programs.
If I can also add quickly, one of the things that we have to do as a part of this new program is to actually hold a public hearing on this topic. So I think that would be a great opportunity to solicit folks to offer testimony around how to improve the program and how we can make it as effective as possible. So we'll definitely, prior to that, Council, reach out to your office to make sure we're touching all the organizations and groups that would and should be a part of this.
Thank you. And my final question is, the Main Streets program, is there any tie into the City of Boston Main Streets district in terms of supporting them, especially with women-owned companies in the Main Street district or minority-owned companies in Boston's Main Streets program? What impact would that have, if at all? Just curious.
Yeah, I think we definitely have and will continue to partner closely with the Small Business Office that works with the Main Streets programs. I think one thing to keep in mind, and I know you're a good amplifier of this information, is that we have to focus on contract opportunities, things that the city buys, right? Because I think that was one piece that the disparity study really helped people to see, because you can't just do, this is Boston's population, this is what our spending should look like. It's what minority-owned and women-owned local businesses are in the spaces of things that we buy in general, right? But then also things that we're buying in the next 6 months. And so there might be something for, a Main Street storefront, especially in the professional services area. There might be an alignment, but we just have to be careful that people, because I've already had a lot of businesses reach out to me, and we have to make sure that the messaging is really clear around, it's not that we're creating new contracts to cater to a specific group. We want to, with our existing planned buying, we want to make sure that where there's a historical availability and lack of utilization, we kind of create a little shelter there. And so say, for example, photocopying, right? If we have a photocopying contract coming up, we might say, wow, we have a lot of availability. However, we haven't spent a lot there. Let's do a small shelter here. So I hope I'm not too jargony, but we want to make sure that this isn't like, this is a program to support all minority-owned businesses, because we want to make it really aligned with what we're buying and where there's availability.
Well, thank you for taking my questions. I want to say thank you to the administration staff that's presenting today. Thank you to Mayor Wu's team. I also want to acknowledge my colleague, Councilor Flaherty, for the important work you're doing on this issue. Councilor Flaherty, I have no further questions.
Thank you, Councilor Flynn. Good afternoon, Councilor Baker. I see Councilor Baker here. You can do an opening in any questions you have for this panel.
Thank you, Councilor Flaherty. And good afternoon, everybody. Good to spend a little bit of time with you, even though it is on camera. So thanks for clarifying what shelter market is. It just seems like we have the ability to go in and implement some changes within 30B. And the name of that is sheltered market, if I have that broken down correctly. Yeah, Justin shaking his head. Thank you, Justin. Couple quick questions. 6 contracts. Are those contracts like, can we name those contracts? Is there like a contract with the schools, contract with Public Works? And what is the dollar amount on these 6 contracts?
So I'll certainly let, first of all, hey, Counselor, how are you? Good to see you. Thanks for participating today. The contracts we have not identified specifically, we really need to write the procedures, and that's this column right here. I don't know if my screen is still presenting, but we really need to write the rules of the road for what this is going to look like. And then we sort of can identify the contracts with what we're going to buy in the springtime. So I don't have a sort of a list of exactly what we're going to do. We know there is ample opportunity to, but we want to make sure we're doing a real public process for the rules of this program before we just start throwing contracts out there. And at the same time, sort of identifying to Selena's point earlier, we have stuff we know we're going to buy, and we got to make sure we're targeting those industries and those sectors that were identified in the disparity study as lacking or sort of having excess capacity that we weren't reaching. So we're going to spend the next couple of months really digging in on that, and then have a public hearing about the rules that we plan to use this program under.
So then when you write those, and so six is just, okay, we're going to go after at least 6 of them. So then when I would assume, not quite knowing what they're going to look like, the dollar amount will follow thereafter. So I'll hold my question until then.
I think it's a good question. And I think to Michael's point, I think we want to see what this looks at a couple different sizes too, right? Like let's find a small one, a medium one, and a larger ones that we can then sort of test to make sure that we're getting all the different variation when it comes to different contracts.
Okay. And Michael, you said, what is your title again?
Director of Strategic Procurement. I did in Justin's office.
You're in Justin's office. So do you work with Kevin Coyne in procurement?
Yes, indeed.
Will this all play out in Kevin's office? Will they need to develop new well, of course, they'll need to develop new practices and that sort of stuff. So will there be support there for that office to be able to do that? And what will that support look like?
We've been working very tightly with Kevin as we've been exploring this and many of the other alternatives. So he's been a piece of the conversation all the way through. Yes, we'll be working very, very tightly with him as we implement this. Again, that his office does, however, primarily focus on goods. So this one, I would say that there will be some of those, but his expertise in procurement and the details of 30B are going to be invaluable, really, as the rubber hits the road on this one.
Okay. I think I'm good. Thank you, guys. Have a good day.
Councilor Baker. Kerry, are there is there any public testimony, anyone waiting in the waiting room that needs to be admitted?
Hello, Mr. Chair. No one signed up for public testimony, and there isn't anyone in the waiting room.
Thank you, Christine. I appreciate that. Do any of my colleagues, Councilor Murphy, Councilor Baker, any further questions of the panel? Are there any questions the panel has of the council? We've been seeing and hearing no desire for any additional testimony or any questions. I just want to appreciate Justin, Selena, and Michael, your time and your efforts on this, and look forward to speaking with the chair to see whether or not there's an opportunity to get a committee report turned around. But we understand the importance and the significance. We understand where our city has been falling short. This clearly is a step in the right direction to help close those gaps, and appreciate all the time and attention that you guys and the administration have put into providing more economic opportunity for our residents and for our small local minority-owned businesses. So with that said, I don't have anything further. I don't see any of my colleagues wishing to add anything additional. So with respect to this docket, this is docket 1239, on order authorizing the creation of a sheltered market program for minority and women-owned businesses in the city of Boston. The Committee on Government Operations is adjourned. Thank you all, and enjoy the rest of the afternoon.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Happy holidays if we don't see each other.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.